Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Eduard Popescu. He's a health sciences student at Queen's and one of my oldest friends from high school who taught me a lot about health sciences during this conversation. Today, you can expect to learn about the research Eduard has been doing in his thesis on chronic kidney disease, how access to information is changing the landscape of society, some ethical questions about the future of medicines and treatments to common problems like Ozempic and genetic modifications, the role of lifestyle and doctors in general health, and how we manage our academic workloads, procrastination, and finding a healthy amount of stress in life. And then finally, how to stand out in a selection process for anything you're trying to apply to. It was a fantastic chat over reading week. Had some fun and challenging topics. Don't mind the sniffles. It was quite cold on our walk. But yeah, it was really good, and I hope you can take something away from this conversation. Please enjoy.
Edward, we are live. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. A long time coming.
Yeah.
It's like, so
I'm so happy that you invited. I can't lie, I'm kind of a fan of the podcast.
You're a fan of the podcast?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
You have a fan in me.
I've
been catching up on your previous ones recently.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I
Good talks, interesting talks.
Upload them to more things because not a lot of people, I thought more people use Spotify, but from what I've heard, not a lot of people do.
Really?
But yeah, it's got a good 150 total listens to the podcast. So
across the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Putting up numbers here.
Is that individual people or
no,
just listens? Okay.
Listen to each.
I see that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Got the Queen's man here. Oh,
you're a rival, right?
I just want to ask, what do you think about the Queen's Western rivalry?
I can't lie. I'm not. Other than on Hoko or something, I don't really ever see it come up because I don't go to football games or anything. But
yeah,
I remember that was it a year ago or 2 years ago? That really famous ESPN clip of the Queen's announcer no Western touchdown, fuck, or something like that.
Yeah,
that was a big.
That was funny.
Yeah,
when he catches the ball and it's just yeah. Honestly, I think it's funny. Sports rivalries.
Uh-huh.
I don't I understand it a little bit. Gotta support your team, but if you're not playing on the team, why do so many people care?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's fun to have a team that you, I don't know, traditionally hate, even though you don't know. I think it's similar to the Canadians or Maple Leafs kind of thing.
True.
Why the hell do we hate each other? I don't know. In our lifetime, we saw the 2021 thing, but apart from that, it was why they've been good teams at different times basically in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And we haven't really seen that crazy a rivalry, but you kind of just do it because it's tradition.
Yeah, I find it particularly funny now with the Four Nations face-off, where if there's the Canadians Leafs rivalry, but then there's also Boston's in the mix.
Yeah.
And then Marchand's on Team Canada.
Yeah.
And the Canadians fans that are at the game are now cheering for Marchand.
Yeah. They're doing the same with Marner and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the second Matthews or Nylander touches the puck, it's booing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
It's great.
Funny stuff. How's the thesis research going?
Oh, that's going. It's nicer this semester. Last semester I had, I don't know, I have a big problem with procrastination myself. Couple that with I'm doing my thesis with my girlfriend as well. So we're doing it together and we both have procrastination problems. And then also everyone in my lab has procrastination problems. So
it's just everyone's
yeah, no, obviously, but everyone's feeding into each other. So we ended up doing it in the last possible week last semester. So it's super stressful.
Yeah.
Now it's going we're much more proactive. We learned our lesson.
Yeah.
So it's going better this time. But
give the fans a nice background of the whole
sure.
The whole research.
The whole research thing. So
I'll ask you some questions. I'll be the question asker.
Absolutely. So I guess our lab is concerned with chronic kidney disease, and I guess one of the biggest complications that comes from that is vascular calcification, which is basically, it leads into a lot of the cardiovascular problems that happens with people who have failing kidneys. So things like stroke and heart attacks and things like that, they come from the fact that your kidneys can't excrete those minerals as well when they're failing. And so you have a buildup of those minerals in your blood. And then that basically enters your blood vessels and it basically turns them to bone.
I thought
Which
minerals were good for you.
Well, they are good for you, but everything in moderation, right? So your body has like this kind of complicated system of trying to keep everything at the perfect level, because the second it gets too much, that's when it enters your vessels and it just basically turns those to bone itself. It like ossifies it, and then that kind of hardens, and you can't like, I don't know, like whenever you have to regulate your blood pressure, for example, you've got to dilate and contract your vessels, right? And you just can't do that very well. So, and then that also leads into like all the heart attacks and stuff like that. So our lab is like a bit unique in handling it, because we're kind of investigating it's like a not very well researched and kind of novel like part of it, which is there's this system of proteins that are in your circulation that act as kind of like a buffer for those minerals when it's in excess. So I think they're called calciprotein particles, and they're basically you have like this protein called fetuin A that's like in your circulation that's constantly going around, and it's also found a lot in your bones as well.
Okay.
And it's involved in handling minerals, handling calcium and phosphate specifically. So the idea is that you have this protein going around your body so that in the event that you suddenly have a lot of minerals, like in people with chronic kidney disease, because they can't excrete it, they basically handle those minerals so that it stops it from going into those vessels and calcifying.
So you put more of those in your body than
theoretically
the minerals.
That's exactly it. That's right, except for the fact that there's a high turnover of that protein as well. So like it's not like I don't know, kind of similar to like insulin shots, right? You have to like constantly do it.
Okay.
And it's not quite as easy, and that's not really like the therapeutic way that people handle it. Patients usually go on like dialysis or something to basically compensate for having failing kidneys. So that's not really the avenue of research that we're doing, but we're basically like, because this is like not a really well understood thing, it's much more of a physiology lab where it's like we're trying to understand how this system works before we can even like think of like therapies or anything like that.
Okay.
So our thesis was like, fetuin A was that main protein that is involved in making these particles that handle these minerals. So there's this kind of assay, a technique that is used to measure proteins in a lot of these labs. It's called an ELISA. Mm-hmm. It uses like basically antibodies that are specific to that protein to try to quantify those proteins. So the ELISA that exists for fetuin A, we found is it's very unreliable. It gives different like amounts for different things. And the idea is if you're able to quantify this protein, you could better understand like, okay, this system is failing in this kidney, or is like a precursor to the idea that if this kidney is failing, do we see more fetuin A or less fetuin A in the system that is able to buffer these changes in minerals and things like that? And the idea is like, it's a really useful thing to be able to measure this protein, but how do we do it if this assay is kind of flawed? So basically our thesis was looking at like
how to measure it,
and is there a way that you can standardize any given sample you're given from like a human patient's blood in a way that makes it so that every different assay is like comparable to each other? Because if you're just to take the same sample right now and put it on different companies' assays doing the same thing, quote unquote, they give you different results, which is not great. And so we kind of found that those like particles that form in your body, like I said, with those proteins handling those minerals, mm-hmm. whether those exist or not is something that changes the
whether
sort of
they exist or not, or like the number of them.
No, so whether they exist or not. So the idea is like, maybe I didn't explain this part really well, but these particles are like kind of amalgamations of proteins and minerals, right? Okay. So you have like this free protein called fetuin A, and then a bunch of those fetuins and a bunch of that calcium and a bunch of that phosphate come together to form these CPPs, calciprotein particles. And the idea is that healthy people don't necessarily have those, but people in CKD have a lot of excess minerals and form those much more readily. So the idea is if you have a lot of those CPPs, or if they're forming in general, we think that they're changing the conformation of the protein, so like the shape of it,
Okay.
in a way that it changes whether the assay itself can detect it. Because remember, it uses antibodies, which is like very specific to a certain part of the protein.
Mhm.
So if that's changing the shape in some way, it might
So then-
affect it.
If it's detected,
Mhm.
that means their kidneys fail.
In Not necessarily, just because everyone has an endogenous level, like a certain level of fetulin in general. But the idea is, if, say, like a school of thought that we're going down is like, if your kidneys are failing, your body's going to have like an adaptive response to increase the amount of that fetulin.
Mhm.
So, maybe higher levels or different like conformations of that. Like I said, like if they're going into this sort of CPP form, maybe it's changing its shape in a way where we can detect and we can differentiate between the two shapes and see if at some point it has been in a CPP form. Maybe that's indicative of CKD is starting, something like that.
I see.
Yeah, that is the long-winded little convoluted explanation. But I guess the outlook of that is like the significance of it is like kidney disease is something that like in some way, shape, or form, I think like 20% of Canadians will have some sort of kidney problems in their lifetime.
Damn.
And the biggest complication that comes from that is cardiovascular problems because of that calcification. So if we understand better like the physiological systems that are involved in buffering that sort of those two parts of it, maybe we can come to some sort of therapeutic part of it, but that's way down the line.
Wait on.
Yeah.
Are you like actually testing this like on people, or are you just like how do you actually do this
So
research?
what we're doing now is we have blood samples that are from like a very long time ago, like a study from like I want to say before COVID or something. They basically just did a whole study. It has nothing to do with this. It had something to do with like calciprotein particles maybe, but it was more like vitamin D related.
Okay.
And they like a lot of these labs just have these negative 80-degree freezers that are huge, full of like blood samples from God knows when. And so we just use those to like test it in different ways. And in our lab, we basically just like form different calciprotein particles, use minerals and like different assays to test things like that. We're not really going in and like collecting blood ourselves. It's just kind of something that's already been there from previous parts of the lab. This lab's like really old. In fact, our PI is like retiring soon. So it's kind of like we kind of get free reign a little bit to do whatever. Because these like samples are theoretically super expensive. It's from like this, I don't know, like, they didn't want it. They've been like keeping it in the freezer for like a good use for it.
Okay.
And now that it's ending, they're like, for free reign, fuck it, do whatever you want. Which is nice, yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
What causes your kidneys to get all jacked up like that?
That is a good question. Where we go? Fork in the road, yes, right?
I don't want to walk through the beach sim again.
To be honest, I don't know the major reasons. I'd imagine a lot of it ties into cardiovascular problems. Everyone knows that like
Cardiovascular problems cause
kidney problems, and the other way, it is a vicious cycle. The body is like meant to have this like homeostasis, this balance of like everything being perfect, and the second one thing goes out of whack, it kind of causes everything. Yeah. And so I'd imagine like your kidneys are probably one of, if not the most important thing to regulating like your blood pressure and your ability to like handle different like changes in blood pressure, different where are we going? This way?
Let's go this way.
Different like states that like when you're exercising or something, and like or if you consume a bunch of water, like it's basically the thing that's regulating whether your blood is getting to the different tissues or not, along with your heart and things like that. But the second that you kind of add these complications over your lifetime that screw with your cardiovascular system, which we know is like a very big problem nowadays with kind of the diets that humans are having, as well as living longer in general. Cardiovascular problems are like basically the biggest killer nowadays.
Yeah.
That's definitely probably a part of why kidney disease is increasing. Yeah.
Interesting. So your kidneys, like, what? I haven't even, my highest biology level of education is like watching House MD.
Oh, fair enough. I'm doing that right now. It's such a good show.
Yeah. So
I'm behind you in that.
forgive me, in the, actually understanding what's going on. Like,
Uh-huh.
I didn't take grade 11 biology or
Oh,
anything.
fair enough.
At what point in your track is your kidney? Is it like part of the, like your water goes through it, right? That's what
Right.
like the pee comes out of.
That's right.
And
People consider the kidney, it's not, it's almost its own tract. It's the urinary tract.
okay.
That's like, it's separate from the digestive tract. It's separate from the cardiovascular tract. It's basically responsible for making urine, but that urine has multiple reasons for being made, right? Like you said, like the water aspect of it is your body has, like, it needs a specific kind of volume within its blood so that it matches sort of the volume within the interstitium, which is like the spaces between your cells, basically. So if you were to have too much water in your system and your kidneys aren't excreting that water, you'll get things like edema, which is like your pooling of your blood within your tissues. You see like people with like really big swelling legs.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically because they can't like excrete that water very well, is a big component of that.
Yeah.
So it's involved in like handling your water levels. It's involved with handling excreting like waste products. So urea, for example, or the reason we call it urine is comes from the fact that we metabolize proteins and things like that, right? And it's some sort of like nitrogen-based compound that you need to get out because it's basically toxic if you don't.
Okay.
Yeah. It's involved in like maintaining that kind of the proper level of everything. Like a cool thing, I guess, if you didn't really, take biology, the kidneys themselves, they're not really like, it's like a cool system where it's not like it'll take everything out of your blood and whoosh it out by itself. What it does is it's basically you have this part of the kidney that's take everything out of the blood, and then this second part of the kidney is take back whatever you need.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a cool, it's able to regulate both parts separately. So say you have like too little water, you want to retain water inside your blood, it'll kind of cut off the first part, not have as much like get everything out of there as possible. If you're trying to maintain specific amounts of things, it'll regulate the second part that's like, okay, we got to have more, we got to keep our glucose levels up or something, so we'll take back as much glucose as possible or something like that. It is a cool system. Yeah,
Body works in mysterious ways.
that's right.
All right, we're back.
I'm not too loud, am I, in that?
No,
Like,
that's
okay.
perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, these microphones are pretty good at regulating all
sick.
the volume. You could talk like, it like has an automatic, like I could yell and I could get like really quiet and it'll like be
Okay.
relatively the same.
That's
I
pretty
think.
cool.
Yeah,
Smart mics.
it's
Oh man.
pretty interesting. Yeah, I like learning biology, like not in the,
I
like,
think that's the best way to learn too.
practical biology.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know, like it's cool to know how stuff actually works,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it's like, drink lots of water, do exercise, eat good food, and you'll be
And you
okay.
like see the results of it happening, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
like understanding the
Love it.
mechanisms, I find is
Mhm.
getting more and more interesting to me.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, I don't really understand vitamin D,
Mhm.
but like I know it's good.
Mhm.
Do you know much
Neither
about
do I.
vitamin
Oh
D?
god. So people, okay.
I'm just gonna be
This
asking
is
you random
this is
questions.
horrible because like as I mentioned, like that the blood that we're using for our study comes from like this old vitamin D study because our lab used to do a lot of vitamin D stuff,
Yeah.
and we talk about it in lab meetings all the time. And every time it's so complicated that I have to like go on my computer and like search up what the hell we're talking about. And every time I forget. So this is great. But like, okay, vitamin D, it's like important for bone regulation. That is like probably one of, if not its major function, is like it's important for helping your body, one, absorb calcium from your digestive tract. If you didn't have vitamin D, you just wouldn't absorb calcium. And then it's also important for having the regulation of your you might have heard that your bones are like constantly turning over. They're like there's basically
Your bones are turning over?
yeah, so they're your bones are like basically constantly regenerating, kind of like the rest of your body is always like like cells are dying, cells are
Like
like
every 7
duplicating.
years, you're a completely new
Exactly,
person.
you're like new person, kind of something like that, where it's like you need minerals to like the reason you need minerals, right? You need minerals for conduction in your nervous system. Like you need minerals to bind certain parts of your proteins to make them work within your cells. But a big part of it is that calcium, phosphate, they make up the actual structure that makes your bones strong. And your body is always consuming different amounts of minerals, but because of that, because we don't want that sort of excess minerals in your blood, which we just talked about with like the CPPs, you need to have a place to store it or excrete it right away. You just do not want that buildup.
So your bones level, you got too little, it has to be able to manage with that.
Exactly.
To manage that too.
That's exactly it. And so your bones act kind of like a storage for that, but it's also two-pronged because like you want it to act as a storage because you want them to be strong and like calcified, because the thing that makes it strong is that calcium and like the minerals that kind of they crystallize and they form into these like strong structures, right?
So if you had too much vitamin D, would that mean calcification?
I don't think vitamin D in excess, like, everything in excess is, I don't know much about vitamin D like toxicity, but I'd imagine it's easier to have less than to have more than you need. I wouldn't imagine it's like immediately toxic unless you consume like a whole bottle of like vitamin D drops or something at once. I don't know. But like it's important for your bones to have this kind of turnover, so it's constantly changing based on your body's needs, right? So you have like these cells in your bones that are like osteoclasts are involved with basically degrading bone and releasing those minerals. Osteoblasts are involved with reshaping that bone, and they're constantly working together to like do the opposite of each other's jobs. And one's turned on a bit more, one's turned off a bit more, depending on what your body signals that it needs.
Okay.
And vitamin D is like an important part to make those cells work and actually be able to do their jobs. I'm not entirely sure about like the chemistry behind why, but that's like, it's like a very important thing for that. I think it's also involved in some way with immune systems in some way. That I have less information on.
Yeah, it's like people say you'll get sick less if you have more vitamin D.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where it comes into play, but like I'm pretty sure it's just like a lot of these kind of vitamins and minerals, they're what's called like cofactors or coenzymes or something, which are basically you need them to bind to a certain protein to make it work. Otherwise that protein just won't do its job. And so if you don't have that thing, it's just not going to do its job. And I'd imagine it's somewhere in like the immune system, you need that. But yeah, I don't know for sure how that works. Yeah, my PI would be pissed if he hears that.
Well, yeah, I found like right now, there's just so much knowledge out there. Retaining it all is like almost futile in the volume that you need to know. And like also like knowing that you need to know something and knowing it is like almost the same thing at this point, because you can just so quickly pull out your phone and just figure it out.
That's right.
But it is also good to be able to.
Yeah, I feel like the human standard is becoming, it's reshaping than what it has been in history, which is like, it's always been important to be able to put things together. But in history, it's probably been more valued as well to remember things, to be able to learn something and not forget it and know how to apply it later.
Yeah.
But now because of like the fact that everyone has all the information there and there's constantly so much information that like you look at any doctor, it's literally impossible for them to all keep up with every single new paper that comes out to best inform themselves. So it's really much more shaping to like, it's important for everyone to be able to have like the fluid intelligence, which is like the kind of based on whatever information you have, here's this new idea or problem, try to figure it out as best you can. Which is, it's an interesting kind of paradigm to have. Like,
yeah. When do you think that happened? Like, I feel like for much more time than now, the world has always been in like a lack of knowledge where like you'd have to go out and search what you're trying to know, and then like there's just a lack of general knowledge out there. People are like a lot more like they just don't have as much access to information. And then at some point we now have excess access to information where we're like almost just like swarmed with so much information that it's like analysis paralysis, where not much is moving on, and it's just everyone's just looking at shit and they just don't know what to do. So
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely say it was the internet that did that. I don't think it's like, I think it's slowly built up that way when like even during like the 20th century, everyone started getting post-secondary educations and like everything like accelerated in terms of like inventions and stuff. But I think just the fact that the average Joe can search up what the newest Nature article says about cancer is like, it definitely evens the playing field in terms of like, I don't know, it's like an interesting thought is like everyone kind of has the ability to teach themselves up to like a PhD level if they're really committed by themselves. So like, at what point does it become that in the future that people even need like degrees anymore? At this point, like degrees are almost like, is it like, I guess it's like it's an environment for you to be able to apply that thing for sure. You can have the investment in the funds to actually apply what you're learning into like some sort of contribution to the scientific field. But it's also like you're showing you're committed to a certain thing. Yeah.
I find it's like a degree is almost just proof that you can stick to something for 4 years.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
So
no, I definitely still see the value in like, I know there's like people who argue that like it's pointless now, and I think it is I think it's pointless to like I think in the 20th century, like this kind of American dream, like your kids are going to college and like everyone just goes to college no matter what, was a bit of it's like a flawed thing because not everyone needs college for whatever they end up doing.
And now it's less valued too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a double inflation where it gets more expensive and there's more like things out there so that they're valued less.
True. Yeah, you can definitely get away with not doing it much more now. But I think it's still like, I don't know. I know there's people that argue that like abolishing the idea of like college is not for everyone. Like people go like, "You're stupid for going into that. You can do this." Like, I don't know. I don't think you can realistically do like some STEM thing without doing a degree because that's like just impossible.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the degree.
It definitely does. Yeah.
Because one, you wouldn't have enough resources, but it depends on the degree and it depends on the person. Like,
true.
And what resources they have access to.
Yeah.
Like, I find I can learn things pretty easily when I'm given a lot of like different tasks and challenges. Not so much like lectures and stuff because I get that anywhere, but like finding the right questions to ask myself to challenge my knowledge and like grow is very difficult to do on your own.
Right.
Versus like when you're at university and you're given all the assignments that you have to do and then you know the questions you have to answer to learn. It's a much like using that structure, it's a lot easier to learn. But at the same time, I know that all the information is out there and more. And if I just like had the pure dedication and will to learn it, I could do that, you know?
Yeah. No, fair. I see that. That's exactly the reason why I think like in a world where maybe it wouldn't be mandatory, I would still need to do it because I know myself that like without having that kind of structure to like give me those problems and give me those like abilities to apply it, I don't know if I'd be able to come up with those myself. Or even like, to be honest, by myself, keep up with like learning the content without having a kind of structure to it.
Yeah, definitely applies the pressure on you.
It does, yeah.
It's a first world problems, having not enough problems that you have to have the structure of the problems to answer them.
That's right.
But
it's an interesting,
Yeah, I like with ChatGPT now, with like medical papers and papers that aren't really in my field. Like I've injured myself, like my knee, my shoulder.
Yeah.
Injure myself quite a bit, but learning about different things, it's like I'll look through like Google Scholar, and because I've got like a university like email, I can access that.
Right.
And then I'll just look at all these different articles and then just throw them into chat and say, "Can you summarize this for me?" And then just ask 8 questions. Like,
no, it's so good for that. It is. I don't know. I'd be lying if I didn't say I've used chat for like that type of thing too. Like, I think it's only a matter of time until institutions realize that it's like the new calculator, like you can't outlaw it. You just have to learn how to work around it. And teach people how to use it effectively.
Effective use is the biggest thing.
It is, yeah. It's not write this for me. It's like, I don't know, help me think of ideas for this, but also explain this part to me. And like,
I feel like I see a lot of people who use it very ineffectively.
I've seen it.
They're not learning anything.
Yeah, I've seen it in like TAing. Like at this point, I don't know. Even using it myself, you just kind of learn what like looks like written by ChatGPT, and you kind of just know, okay, this person has no idea what they're talking about. Like my PI also teaches like a course that I took last semester, and he was telling us in a lab meeting once that like he never like had a problem with chat or anything until one of the final exams that he like the semester before us, he had read it and he was like, this has nothing to do with the courses, but this is exactly what you would like. The course is so like cognitive, like putting pieces together and things like that. It has nothing to do with what chat would know based on like Google. And like you can tell, like just reading it, it's just plug and paste into chat. And he failed them. It was the first people he ever failed. This guy's like 70 something.
Like the same thing as in French class back in like elementary school and grade 9. Like I know you're a lot more French adept than me, but I personally was not a very good French student. So I would just Google Translate a lot of things. And constantly get marks off because it's right, but we hadn't learned it yet.
That's right. Yeah.
And I feel like chat is going to do the same thing where it's not about being right anymore in the universities. It's more about saying what they want you to hear, which is a dangerous thing where it's like, if I'm getting the right answer, I'm getting the right answer. Like, it doesn't really matter how I'm getting the right answer. I'm getting the right answer. But
no, that's a good point.
A lot of people would disagree in the institutions. But I think it's also like, it's like the argument of they're upset because they didn't have these things and they did it without it. So they're trying to punish it for being out there.
I completely agree. There's a lot of like old people will be like, I had to go through this, you have to do it too. Like, and no, it is an interesting idea that like that precedent of if it moves towards like, okay, we'll allow chat, but we'll know if you're using chat because it's not something we learned. It gets a bit into like, okay, at what point are we being taught what this like professor's frame of mind is or worldview is compared to like what is actually like objectively true? Like whereas like before chat, you can like, go and research it yourself. And even if it disagrees with the professor, if you can cite it or whatever, then that's like it's a valid thing. But at what point, if the standard is that it has to be based on how you were taught, it's no longer like you're kind of getting this like, I don't know, objective look at like what this topic is. It's just what the professor thinks it is.
Yeah, and then you're giving the professors almost too much power over what like everyone's believing. Very interesting. I think, one of my professors, this is the only professor so far that's done this. It's like on the first lecture, he's like, you can use chat however you want, however much you want, but at the same time, we're also going to be able to tell. And as long as you cite it, it's completely okay. I don't care. Just say like from chat, like however you, I don't even know how to properly cite.
How do you chat?
It was just, I just put it in the references, just ChatGPT. And he was perfectly fine with it. And I think that's a very healthy way to do it. Because also, once you get to a high enough level, chat doesn't really know enough, especially in, I don't know about in like medicine, because there is so many papers and that's everything you're learning from. But in engineering, there's a lot of design work. Chat can't really help with that. Like there's a TA that I was talking to that I have one of my courses where like this professor teaches all sorts of courses in concrete and he's a very, very smart guy. He's like, you can bring a supercomputer, you can bring 3 friends, you can bring whatever you want. It will not help you in the slightest to pass this exam. Like it just gets to the point where it is like your own personal challenge. You have to use all of the resources available to figure it out. And that's my favorite type of course, like open book courses where you have to prepare heavily, be able to reference back to the proper things and all that. Like,
no, I completely agree. That's the best.
That's the best type of course for real application, anything.
Because that's how it is in real life too. It's not like you're shutting yourself down away from the internet when you're working a real job or something.
Yeah, just give yourself an extra challenge of like, you're not allowed to use a graphing calculator. You have to hand differentiate this. Like that's what I find the silliest thing about like the first 2 years of engineering school. Like,
is that how it is? You don't use a graphing calculator?
You're not allowed to, but then I recently got a graphing calculator. And my friend has used one the entire time. And like the TAs aren't really checking. So you can kind of use whatever.
No, fair enough.
And like I don't like cheat with it, but it's just faster to use that than to do stuff by hand. So
otherwise you just run out of time doing something that you could have done anyway. Like
exactly.
It's not really showing what you know.
Exactly. And it's interesting how professors are like not like the argument of I didn't get to do this, therefore you didn't get to do this, and you have to learn all this stuff because I learned all this stuff, even though we're like miles ahead. Like that's something I have an issue with my AI part of my degree. Because AI is like a field that's like so much money is flowing into it and it's developing so quickly. We're learning, I'm basically done the AI portion of my degree. And I've learned up to like 2020 level.
Oh, but it's advanced so much
there's
since
3 extra years of stuff where like I don't know how, like I don't think I would fare well in any sort of AI capacity.
Right.
It would have to be like I learn on the job, and like once I know the challenges that are there. Like they don't do a very good job of challenging us effectively because we're the first like group going through it.
Right. It's
like all
you joined it.
All of the quizzes and stuff are just so like nothing to do with anything, and it's a little bit frustrating. But
yeah, I'd imagine
it is what it is. And I was gonna say, ask your thoughts on this because it like ties into medical, but also the issue with like professors being, if I had to do it, you have to do it. With Ozempic, where it's like a lot of like people who are, I found myself thinking this when like it first came out and like the idea of it first came out. I'm like, that's stupid. It's just like a cheat code. If I had to spend 2 hours in the gym every day, eat right, do all this stuff to get like fit, but now people can just take a pill. What the fuck am I doing? I don't like this. But then it's like I'm using the same mentality as these professors.
That's right.
Being like, you have to learn this because I have to learn this. You can't just skip ahead. And I'm just curious your thoughts on Ozempic and whether or not it's a good or a bad for different types of people.
I think you doing it the way that you think is best is still gaining something above the people that use Ozempic and quote unquote cheat codes, is that you still have that kind of perseverance and like harder work mindset that got you to where you are. You can feel much more proud about what you did to get there. I think that once you use something like Ozempic, you just lose out on like the entire mental arc that comes with the longer journey to get to that same point.
Yeah.
But I think,
so you think professors are justified to use that same logic? Like
I don't think that they're justified to impose it on people, which is the reason why I think something like Ozempic should always be allowed to be used.
Freedom.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that if a medical practitioner were to be asked that, and I think it's just not something that's talked about very much, it's something that I think they should encourage. Not whatever, like they give their own medical advice, but I think there is like a component that maybe isn't talked about as much, which is the mental and sort of personal growth that comes with not cheating through it.
Yeah.
Quote unquote cheating through it. We say cheating through it, but then again, like, what the hell is medicine? The idea of medicine is like you're cheating death.
Yeah.
At some point, it's like a frame shift, or like a mind frame shift or whatever. That like, I don't know, in 30 years, no one's gonna be having this conversation because it's just the norm.
Yeah.
Right.
But then that's a dangerous, like, not danger. I guess kind of dangerous precedent to set where it's like, if you're always doing like allowing the freedom to have these shortcuts, and then you get into like genetic altering stuff, like genetically altering babies, so that like there's just no more like, I don't want to say retards, but like there's no more like the like deformities on babies anymore, and like they're just a part of the world. But then one day they just won't be anymore because you can just like say, I want this, and just like set it, and it's like almost starting. It's like it is a large stretch to say like we're starting down that path now, but like at the same time, is it that big of a stretch if we're just like starting to eat everything? I
don't think it's a long stretch whatsoever. I think that's the clear direction it's going to move in. I don't know how long it'll take to get there, but we will.
Yeah.
I don't know. My thoughts on like that kind of genetic stuff is, if I were to have a child and I had all the resources in front of me to do what I can to make sure that my child is healthy with it, which I think is, there's no parent on the planet who doesn't want their child to be healthy. I think that's like the point of being a parent. If you have the ability to look at their genes and see, my kid's going to have sickle cell disease, and you can change that immediately.
Yeah.
I don't think that any parent would like not do that. The complicating part is where it comes to like non-critical medical traits that are like,
Yeah, I just want my
my
child to
kid's
look
tall
like this.
and handsome and athletic, and yeah.
But do you think, I don't think anyone's going to be able to draw that line when the technology
I don't think
comes
so
to it.
either, which is why it's a bit complicated. I feel like, I don't know, my mentality when it comes to like medicine is like the point of it is to give everyone longer and healthier lives.
Yeah.
And if that comes at the expense of like maybe moral or ethical, like, I don't even know if it's like negative. I think it depends on who you ask, but complications with natural selection and like traits that some people are lucky to have and others aren't.
Yeah.
I don't know if like I care as much about that if it means that we're saving many more people from like early childhood death or like morbidity or something.
But yeah, the only place in devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you think of many of the world's like most renowned, greatest thinkers, people out there, a lot of them went through some tough shit. And if you can just like,
I agree, yeah,
genetically, like if you can just remove tough shit from your life, or minimize tough shit from your life, like it's gonna, I don't know if this is the case, but it just seems like it would be the case, that there's gonna be less extraordinary people, because it's like that mental aspect of getting through something like that grows you into a better person that you can then apply to a large variety of different things.
Completely true, yeah.
And so at what point do we say like the human condition, the human experience, like needs like this, like some level of uncertainty and like the possibility that shit's gonna hit the fan, and like you have to get through it. You can't just snap your fingers and it all goes away, because there's no like time of going through it where you're growing and grieving and whatever else you need to feel to become a better person. But at the same time, the whole point of life is like minimize for that, grows that when you have kids that they don't have to go through the same shit you did. But then it's like the cycle of like there's the four things, like person who has nothing, like weak times create strong men, strong men create weak times, and then like the cycle keeps going. No good.
No,
like,
no, completely fair.
Have you taken an ethics class?
I have taken a couple ethics classes, yeah.
It's like the type of stuff you talk about, or
not necessarily. Yeah, kind of, but it's much more about like the real, like not the hypothetical aspects, but like the realistic, like real world, like maid or
like assisted suicide.
Yeah, exactly. It's not quite as hypothetical, although that would be such a fun course to have.
Yeah, like the future of medicine.
The future of medicine, yeah. Oh, that's a great course. Yeah. And no, I think everything has some sort of level of like Pandora's box to it. And we live in such a like an odd time where things advance so fast that the regulations and the social rules and social norms that we create about each thing that gets created is not developing as fast as those new developments, which has been the case for the entire like history until like the 1900s, right? Like you make a new invention, you kind of figure out how norms shape around that new invention before the next new invention. Whereas like it's crazy that AI's been like advanced so much in the last 5 years and there's like not a single law that's been created about it in like any way. Yeah, I think it's kind of like, I think there has to be a clear like legal line that has to be drawn when it comes to the future of like that kind of genetic modification, because I think that there's an implicit, like one thing that we do learn in those ethic courses is like such a prime rule across everything medicine is, if there is a treatment available and it's there and you can do it, you cannot like you cannot withhold that option from a patient.
Yeah.
And I think if genetics comes to the point where that is an option, where you can scan the genetics of a developing fetus or whatever, or an embryo or something, and see that it's going to have this treacherous disease their entire lifetime, and you can edit that, it's literally just the opposite of ethical to withhold that from them. And I think if that comes at the expense of creating genetically induced hard times, or taking away genetically induced hard times, I think it's worth it for the fact that it's saving lives and it's saving like really bad hardships for like a lifetime from people.
Yeah.
And I think that those hardships can still come from like the nurture aspect of it. I don't think every like, I don't know if every hardship has to come from the fact that you have glasses and you can't see well.
Yeah.
It can come from the, I don't know, growing up in Compton or something. That's, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but do you think with, this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Do you think with less genetic hardships, like there's going to be more like nature hardships where you're not going through, like people need to be challenged and need to have like battles with like stuff out there, because like if you just look at, like they did a study with rats or something.
Yeah.
I don't know the details of it that much, but it's like they gave them basically a rat paradise.
Okay.
All the food they could want, all the like people they could want, like whatever. I don't know what goes into rat paradise, but they gave rats like a certain like set of paradise.
Yeah.
And after a certain amount of time, they just started breaking shit and tearing it down.
Huh.
Do you think there's going to be more problems going on if there's less genetic issues? People are just going to manufacture more issues.
Yeah, I think people like I think it's very much human nature to designate lines that then create conflicts.
Yeah.
It's such a complicated like thing that like I don't think psychologists have ever been able to like even come close to tapping into why or how this happens. But at some point, humans have this tendency to either group things as self or group things as other.
Yeah.
And they just do it no matter what, because that's just how they've genetically, like how they've evolved to have people that they can depend on and then people who they can compete against and defeat.
Yeah. It's like goes back to the Western queens. They just like draw arbitrary lines. Like
That's right.
those guys.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you'll ever be able to get out of that. And that's a fair point. I think with less genetic reasons to have that, there's probably going to be more human created problems. I think that's just like this kind of impossible thing that no one's ever gonna. That's not
Until humans just become AI.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Cyborg AI humans, human versus AI.
Yeah.
You cannot bring that AI boyfriend home. It was a human household.
So honestly, there's going to be arguments like that in the future.
Yeah, there is for sure.
That's hilarious to think what it's going to be like in the future arguments.
Yeah,
that's funny. What do you think your goals as a person in medicine are? Like, do you have a special? Like people generally like get really specialized in stuff, right?
They do, yeah.
What do you think your goal specialty would be?
That's definitely something that comes way later down the line.
Way later?
Focused on like even getting into medicine, which is, at least in Canada, the hardest part. Like that's definitely the bottleneck. After that, it's a bit more like easy flowing. Like there's obviously this big doctor shortage everyone knows about, and it's like not exactly. It's like the getting into med school part. After that, I don't know. I'll see like I'd imagine like doing different rotations and different fields will just change my mind completely from what it is now. I've always kind of said like I like the idea of like anesthesiology is kind of cool, because I don't know if I have the kind of tenacity to be the surgeon myself, but I think sitting in on cool surgeries and like being involved in it, but like obviously like anesthesiology is a very difficult job and it's very important to surgery going successfully, but it's not the one that's like
very difficult
getting
job. Take this, go to sleep.
Well, okay,
in
Canada, anesthesiologists actually have to do the surgeon specialty before they specialize into anesthesiology again.
Really?
Yeah, it is the longest residency in Canada, I'm pretty sure. It's like something like 7 or 8 years after med school.
From the layman's.
From what
it
you
just
like.
Seems like just put mask on patient.
And then patient
goes
goes under. Yeah.
Make sure patient doesn't wake up. If
no,
patient wake up, make him go sleep with more drugs.
That's kind of what it is. There's like a very, I don't know. I'd imagine, I don't know much about it, but there's like a lot of steps that go into that and maintaining everything everything goes well. And it's not just about the sleep, but it's about, we talked about like their homeostasis of the body is like everything has to be in check. That's everything from your brain to your cardiovascular system to everything. And if one thing goes wrong in the surgery, that's a whole other problem you have to tackle there. Yeah. So an anesthesiologist is, he's keeping you under, but he's also maintaining everything, making sure that nothing else goes wrong and other complications go on. I don't know. I've loved working with kids a lot too. So I'd like to do pediatrics, but then there's like the flip side of that is you love working with kids. That's all the more reason to like hate having to see them struggle through things like
it's like
that.
the veterinarians who are like,
that's exactly it. Yeah.
You gotta start putting down a lot of pets.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. That's a future problem for me. I don't know if I think much about that, but I think my ultimate goal is in medicine is I have like two main reasons that I like to do it is and they're very classic and very cliche, which is why I have to work on what I'd say in an interview, but and how you word it. But like it really is like I do want to help people, and I like one of like the biggest joys of my life is just the thank you that comes from being like a nice person to someone or being like getting a smile back or something like that. Yeah. And it is truly like a high that you get when you feel like you've done something good to someone. Yeah. And I do love the kind of puzzles, and I think we've always been very similar from high school about that, like liking board games and puzzles and like doing stuff like that. Figuring shit out. I love that aspect of like the human body is this thing that we've all lived with our entire lives. There's not a single human who hasn't, but we still don't know so much about it. And it's about using the different information that we have to make the best guess and best possible conclusion about what we should do. Yeah. It's just so cool.
It reminds me of House.
Yeah.
Just like trying to solve all the puzzles.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he that's like his thing.
The mentality of House is like, there's like this common like saying, I think they say it in like the first episode of House. It's like, we look for, when you hear feet trotting or something like that, you think horses, not zebras. Yeah. Which is like, you test for like the most common thing. And then House is like, they're always doing the zebra. Like they're doing like this outlandish, like, it's not cancer, that's too easy. Yeah. It's fucking brainworm.
Yeah, it's a lot of fancy words that never usually repeat.
No, it's very cool.
Very interesting. Yeah. What do you think about, I find like with doctors, this is the way my mind works. With doctors now becoming like, you think back to like the 1800s. Yeah. A doctor is like your whole body. Something goes wrong, he's got to figure it out or you're kind of like screwed.
Yeah.
But now it's like there's specialists everywhere that have their own little thing. And of course, like the way my mind works, like if you have your specialist, you're always going to think that's what's like wrong with someone in front of you. If that makes sense. Like that's what you're looking for.
Yeah,
and
that's
if you're looking for it, you're more likely
if you're an oncologist, you're expecting cancer. If you're yeah.
What do you think like doctors' abilities to like help the just general health of people is, where like if I'm not like sick, but like I just have like low energy or like I'm just not feeling well throughout the day, and it's just like a general health issue, you go see a doctor, like in my estimation, they don't usually give the best advice. Yeah. Where it's like, get outside in the sun more and just get your heart rate up a little bit more. Yeah. Eat a little bit better food. Stop eating nachos and chicken nuggets. Right. Like it's more, take this and this and this and you'll be a lot better. Yeah. Do you think going to doctors for like general health is a generally advisable thing to do, or it depends on the doctor? Or
I think the ideal of what a doctor should be is absolutely. I think the unfortunate reality of Canada's medical system is that doctors are both disincentivized to and just physically don't have the ability to deal with people who have much more regular problems like that. I think in the ideal world where we have enough doctors and enough resources for everyone, there is a genuine care. And I think the problem is there's like this weird dichotomy of like the medical system currently in Canada, it doesn't allow for that type of thing. You see like really long wait times and your MRI took like a year to get or something. Yeah. And like And then, like you said, like you go to a family doctor and they're not gonna tell you, they're like, there's like this medicalization of like, all right, just take this antidepressant or something.
Yeah.
Instead of like, yeah, like you said, go outside and like don't be a couch potato.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be, and I think the ideal of the correct way a doctor should go about it is that they are a caring person that not only like treats you when you come into the office, but that they care about you to the point where they like ask to see how you are, or genuinely take the time to understand what your family is doing, or what genuinely like the sort of intangible non-medical aspects of your health.
Yeah.
Because that's like the type of thing that we have, this thing of like over medicalization of everything now, where we see the increasing rates of depression and anxiety and things like that. And there is reason to believe that in a first world country where we're getting rid of all the other things that suck, as well as making everyone's life easier, yeah, okay, there's going to be more mental problems. But how much is also just people, like, how much is also just like doctors medicalizing something that really is just someone being sad?
Yeah, you can't really prescribe, go make more friends.
That's right. But I think that it should be that way. I think a doctor should be, well, not prescribed, but like should be able to have the time and the responsibility to like, to give things that like, give suggestions to someone's lifestyle that aren't directly medical, but will improve their health and well-being. And I think it's just not, it's like completely unrealistic to expect that now. Because like someone like a family doctor, their incentivization is see as many patients as possible because that's how they get paid.
Yeah.
And there's just not a lot of them either, so it's impossible to get a family doctor in the first place.
Yeah. But like you have to make appointments now. You can't just get yearly checkups.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that sucks. And I think a government that like realizes that should do everything in their power to like to oh God, the medical system sucks. But I think in an ideal world where it's this utopic paradise, doctors are like involved in every aspect, like involved as much as they can be in the aspects of a person's life that's not this kind of medical physical problem, but rather is this gray cloud in your life causing these like health outcomes later on. How do we mitigate this beforehand? Because that's the most effective treatment.
And not everything will work for every person.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
You gotta give them like a list of like, if you like for depression, like if you had like a list of like 20 different habits someone could choose from and be like, I prescribe you do an hour of this every day, or at least like 4 days a week. Like find the time to just do this and you're gonna like become at least a little bit better. Is much better than take this antidepressant and move on.
I completely agree.
Yeah. It's like with the like rising, I guess, I don't know if this is the same, but with all of our medical advances and then the depression level rises with genetic advances and like going to like the like 100 years from now, extreme growth that we're going to experience. Everyone's just going to be like a depressed couch potato and not like want to do anything because we just have so much abundance. People are going to, I feel like, want to start tearing shit down and breaking shit.
Right.
Even though we are so much better off than we were. It's like we are at a time where it is so much better than any other time in history. Like we're out on a walk on a Tuesday noon. Just in the middle of the day as 21-year-olds just chilling, talking. You can't do that in any other time in history. Not that I can remember, unless we were taught history wrong. But
I agree.
At the same time, there's more complaining going on now than ever before. I think it's just kind of...
No, to give a visual to the audience, we keep on walking past these mounds of snow with a lot of dog piss on it. Where in human times would you have seen this sidewalk full of dog pee, except now where people have like the time and the resources to own pets like everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? It's
even like as we've been walking, I don't know about you, but I've noticed like 5 or 6 different FedEx trucks, like 7 or 8 DHL ones, and then like there's the black one with the UPS. Like everyone's just getting shit delivered to them. No one has a reason to leave the house anymore.
Completely true,
And I find, honestly, myself sometimes, like I'll go through an entire day not even leaving the house. Like
me too.
I just have no reason to. But that's also usually the days where like I just feel like sluggish. Like I can't think as well. That's what I like doing these like outdoor walks. I feel like
It's such a good idea.
you can think so much better. But
No, I love it. I love this. Like, I completely agree. Like, getting fresh air and walking around is like, it's so much easier to have just a conversation than to like sit down and think, like twiddle your thumbs and try to think of like what to talk about.
yeah,
And no, yeah,
Yeah.
I second you on everything. Like, we are in like a generation of sitting down much more and not realizing like the intangible parts of like what makes you a happy person and a healthy person. It's much easier to forget about those things, or like not think about the things that you're doing on a daily basis as being bad for you. But yeah,
yeah, I agree. What do you think is like with all the people who are like feeling like shit? What do you think are the biggest prime movers that you could like apply to someone's life that would make it better from what you've learned in school so far as a undergraduate person? I mean, you know more than some people, less than some people. I'm just curious what your opinion is, like the biggest like things to make someone's life better would be.
I think I don't know how much of this I learned in like courses really, but I think I've had the privilege of having a program that's very group focused, not having like, I don't have lecture courses as part of like my core courses, because they're all like basically group activities, group discussions. I like basically all my friends are from my program, because it's like I don't have residence friends, for example, and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think I've had this crazy privilege to not have to experience what I think a lot of people, from what I hear, experience in university if they're not someone who's very outgoing to make friends and stuff like that. Is I don't feel like I have no one to talk to, or like friends, or just social interactions on a daily basis, just because my classes and my involvements require that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that people lose nowadays is just doom scrolling by themselves at home. Like you said, like whenever I'm at home by myself all day, social interaction is like probably the biggest, like just one of the biggest like intangible health components you can have. Where are we going? This way? That's it.
I say that way, but I don't think
Let's just
walk through that.
Just keep on going. Okay.
No, back this way and then back.
Yeah, I think it's like I think
a lot of people just have like, a lot of people, their friends are just the people that they're seeing every day,
right,
as like at work and stuff.
Yeah.
And especially at university, I feel like that's the easiest thing, because everyone's in like the same boat.
Yeah.
I feel like what then I would worry about is people who are like, I don't know, for me personally, a lot of it is like in the past, like at school, it would be like everyone I'm seeing at school is just like my friends, and then I come home and do not much.
Right.
And then when you go off to university and like no one's there anymore, you're like, it's like a shock where you're gonna have to go back out and meet a bunch of new people. And I feel like it's gonna be the same, like something to think about when you leave school or university, and all the people that you're like working with every day, trying to figure out all the problems together. You know them, you know what like works for them, you know what works for you, and it's like a good dynamic. That all just disappears, and then you're left with like a void that you have to go fill somehow.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people now are not very good at feeling those changes and filling them up with something that's good or productive. It's a lot easier to just add an extra 2 hours of doom scrolling to your day than to go out and actually do something that's like more like rewarding for your body. I feel like that's the cause of
no, I completely agree.
Issues.
I think it's really difficult to have big transitions like that, where you feel like, I'm in fourth year, and like basically everyone I know now is just not going to be there next year anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know who I'm going to know next year. Completely different life.
Yeah.
But I think even having an interaction, or even heck, not even like a human interaction, just a pet or something.
Yeah.
Having some sort of social connection is like something that's so inherently human that we just don't understand how, but it has this effect to make you feel better in some way. And I think that's just something that, as difficult as it is, because I know it's very difficult for me too.
Yeah.
Just having like a way to like see people on a daily basis or have some sort of social interaction is just something that's like has to improve your health in some way. We just don't understand it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's weird. Another thing, I guess, which I think is like a pretty common theme in your recent podcast with like the topic of religion and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like another like a big part of religion with at least for a lot of people is like that community aspect or like just another reason to maybe leave the house and meet different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just one more reason to like just like have some sort of context where you can have a social interaction is like, at least that's the thing that I've learned probably the most is like an intangible situation to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing that I think is very, very complicated. Mm-hmm. I heard this thing once from Theo Von, the philosopher Theo Von, where it's like
Aristotle's cousin, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was saying like sometimes he feels down. It's not like he feels like he has nobody to talk to. It's like nobody has him to talk to. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing where it's like, you see, like the common person, they've got lots of like acquaintances that they talk to all the time and like at like the superficial talks. But then if there's no one that's like dependent on you or that like you are their like person to lean on, it's like, I feel like that's something that the human needs. The human needs the responsibility of another person. That's why pets are so big to have. Like, like the crazy cat lady, it feels like almost is like they're just yearning for like the responsibility to care for so many different things.
Right.
And when people aren't having that and they've got no responsibility and they can just like fuck off and do whatever because it doesn't affect anyone but themselves.
Right.
I feel like that's a very dangerous thing that could have detrimental health effects.
Absolutely, yeah. Giving yourself something that you're responsible for, people feel the responsibility of you.
Yeah. But that's I feel like it's so important and so helpful for someone because it is so difficult to do, to be someone that's like that sturdy, that like someone else can rely on you or a dog can rely on you. Like it's not, it seems trivial, but like I don't think it really is something that's like so trivial.
No, absolutely not. I think there's so many, I love learning about these kind of, or like having these thought experiments of like these things we take for granted as like human intuition. You don't really second guess the idea of being there for someone. It's just something you do.
Yeah.
Right? And how did that evolve? Or like, what's the reason that humans have this psychological reason for it? And like, it's so interesting. Like thinking, like we probably developed in like a way that like
you're rewarded for being able to, if you're taking care of someone, someone can take care of you. And then the union.
Altruism to like an extent is something that's like inherent in human nature and like you need to have it to an extent. And that's just how our species like evolved to have a higher competitive prospect than Neanderthals or something.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Yeah. And I think that's one of the values in like trying to study kind of anthropology and like the reason like these kind of inherent traits that have existed forever, like the evolution of human ideas and psychology. And because we know that this has evolved for such a long time, it can inform what we need to do now because it's the type of intangible thing we never think about. And in a world that's changing, like you said, with doom scrolling and everything, you don't really think about the fact that they're changing and it's not an inherent aspect of your life that maybe was for the last 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And that we just need to value those things and have like a way to put it into our lives forcefully if it's not happening naturally.
Yeah. Do you think it's like with all the things that we're losing with this new technologies and stuff, like all those inherent things, once like people are trying to figure them out, people have like figured a lot of them out. Do you think like a virtual reality version of it would be able to like, as a just purely thinking medically,
right?
Would a virtual experience like that with maybe not even the technology of now, but like some technology from like 5 years where you can get like a little bit more immersive, still do that from your home and get those still feelings that would help your mind, even if it's not like real? Or do you think you need the real thing? Like, I think right now you need the real thing, but
I feel like theoretically that can be almost like that sort of black hole of medicalization that we see now, which is like if in the future we come to the conclusion that this is like this medical thing that you need and you're low on social interaction, social capital or something.
Yeah.
And this is the way we prescribe that to you. I think that's another like dangerous example of like how we're over medicalizing everything and taking away the human component, the natural component of everything. And it's like, I fully see how that could be the case, but I feel like even if it did the exact same thing, it loses kind of the point and the beauty of being a human and experiencing the natural world. And like, I don't know. I feel like even if it gets the right chemicals in your brain to do the same thing, I think you just won't get the same fulfillment if you know that there's a world out there that you're not experiencing in the same way as you're doing virtually. I don't know. There's like a beauty about this negative 19-degree wind on my face freezing me.
Yeah, definitely. You could have like, one day there's just going to be like a skin shield where you can just walk outside and not experience the cold. It'll be like this winter out, but personal bubble of I'm in like the Bahamas now, even though it's like snow outside and I'm interacting with the snow. Yeah. Like you can mess with your senses enough to do all that.
That'd be crazy.
Have you looked? I find like the Neuralink new stuff, like with brain implants and stuff, is like another one of those technologies that's quite scary to think about. Like I watched the podcast with the first like Neuralink patient. He was talking about how it's like helping him with his day-to-day life because he's like a paraplegic, right? And it's like just helping him give back some of his motor skills and stuff, but at the same time he can connect it like to his computer, and he's basically got an aimbot in when he's playing like CSGO, right, where he doesn't even need to move the mouse. He just looks at the person and his crosshair goes right to it. And it's like, that's on patient number 1. Yeah. Imagine what happens after patient like 1,000, 10,000. Like the advancements of that. Right. We're going to become cyborgs. It's terrifying.
I mean, I think that's like the direction we're going. I don't think it's a possibility anymore. I don't know. I haven't followed much about the Neuralink stuff, but I know like generally what they're trying to do. And like, I don't know, my philosophy is like, if it's genuinely going for the betterment of like human health and well-being, I think there's like a lot of balance that needs to go into it. Like we said, like there's intangible parts of it. You need like real feelings of that. But I think if it's working that way, I don't know. Side note, I don't know if you remember like Yash Mulkey from he's like a year older than us. He works at Neuralink. I don't know if you know that. Yeah, just kind of wild. It's crazy. He's been on board meetings with Musk himself and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Crazy. I love that, like that thinking of like who in this school is going to be famous in the future. I can't say like I talked to that guy.
And for what?
Yeah. Like what? I don't know if we do that, but like what high school reunion would look like. Who's what?
I don't know if Ivy Park does.
I don't know if they do. You know,
that's like 25 years or something.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't know. Like I talked to a lot of people, but I don't really know a lot of people that well. Going to high school. Yeah. That makes sense, but it would be interesting to see. Straight.
I hope you know where we are, because
I do.
I've like lived in Oakville my entire life. I've never been to these trails.
Yeah, I know. We're just kind of walking around.
Yeah.
Someone who's listening to the podcast was saying it's frustrating to. Sometimes I'll be like on a walk with like a fellow civil engineer and see a bridge, and then you just start talking about the bridge, and it's like completely unhelpful if there's no video to accompany it.
Oh, you got to start videotaping them, eh?
Yeah. You know those like video things where it's like either on the chest or on your head,
right?
That like just gives like a context to walk. I feel like that would be.
Really
I gotta get some technology upgrades for this.
Feel like YouTube's a really easy one to like grow as well.
Yeah.
If you want to expand into that.
Yeah.
And no, that's a good idea. People can see this. We gotta describe the huge mounds of snow.
Yeah, we are currently. It is February 2025, right after the mega snowfall of Oakville,
right?
Where we are just walking down the road. And how much snow do you think we got?
I feel like accumulated, like gotta be half a meter at least, right? Like it's.
Yeah, I was thinking 1.5 feet.
1.5 feet.
So 2 feet.
Half a meter.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Meters.
Yeah.
What are you, Canadian?
No, I'm Romanian, man. I'm European.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's A lot of snow.
How's so how, like, you talked about like your AI degree and how you feel like it's kind of maybe like the structure of the program itself is like a few years behind. But if you intend to like use that sort of in your employment in the future, what kind of, I don't know, like what kind of thing are you looking at? I don't know anything about the AI sphere, to be honest, and like how it's developing. But what are you like looking in the direction of like applying that to?
Honestly, because I'm doing the dual degree of civil and AI engineering.
Right.
And so I'm looking to like bridge that of some kind.
Uh-huh.
But honestly, I don't think that I am much in the AI sphere. Like,
Okay.
I'm in the AI program,
Uh-huh.
but at the same time, I feel like it's such a bubbled thing where it's hard to draw those connections between like what's actually happening in real life. Like I found out about DeepSeek
Yeah.
same time everyone else did.
Right.
Like, it's not like I know that much extra about how large language models work and how they differ and what one company is doing other than to another. Like, I know like the mechanics of it to a certain degree.
Right.
But it's not very like applicable knowledge.
Okay.
Like, it's kind of just.
Oh, I feel like you never know the kind of cross-disciplinary like concepts that you can apply in different ways. That's like the whole thing about creating new thoughts and like inventions is just like applying things from different fields into different things. So
Yeah,
if you end up going into civil and you can apply some concept of
that's the
like-
thing about AI that is interesting that they're doing is the fact that it is not just a single degree
Right.
of like just AI, but you're learning a full civil engineering degree. Plus then you've got the experience of computer programming and AI stuff. And you do learn like about different ways of applications. Like there's 3 kind of major ones in civil engineering.
Yeah.
There's transportation engineering.
Uh-huh.
So optimization of transportation routes, autonomous vehicles, all of that kind of thing.
Right.
Can be done with a lot of data, and in AI projects.
Uh-huh.
Where it's like you can run road simulations and then use reinforcement learning models where it's like you tell it like what you're optimizing for.
Right.
Like at a certain intersection, you want each 4 lanes to have like a balance of time.
Right.
So that you, based on the traffic volumes, you set it to be whatever it needs to be to optimize that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one application of it. The other is building information modeling.
Uh-huh.
So if you're building a project like the Burj Khalifa,
Right.
where it's like the biggest building ever, the amount of different interdisciplinary things that need to go into that to heat the building, make sure it doesn't like fall down due to wind.
Yeah.
Make sure the ground doesn't settle at all.
Yeah.
Make sure that all the materials are like proper and stuff. There's just so many things that go into it, and you have to be able to like optimize that,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of more just like computer programming and knowing how those like it's basically like like a CAD model almost, but like a lot more sophisticated and a lot more layers
Right.
of like the different disciplines, like one's for HVAC, one's for plumbing, one's for structures, one's for like the facade of everything.
Right.
And just doing all that. I don't know how AI actually applies to that really.
Uh-huh.
So that's one of the courses we're taking next year.
Okay.
And then the other one is building maintenance. So having sensors throughout the building to know when stuff is failing and all that kind of thing. Just to like optimize the building health over time.
Right.
And then 4th one that I'm working on a project for as like my mini AI capstone
Okay.
is using drones to create like a photogrammetric model of like a building that you can access hard to reach areas and check for like cracks and stuff and just monitor the building in general.
Oh,
But like if the drone flies autonomously, it's a lot less manpower and like it's just pretty simple stuff. But what we're doing is like a very, very dumbed down version of that with like very, very crappy hardware.
yeah.
So it's
I
like,
mean, like you got to start somewhere with
yeah.
a capstone. That's it. Yeah.
So
Oh, sick. Yeah.
it's like, it's interesting, it's fun, but it's hard and it's confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And like the course content of that course is like how a programming project works and like different project management models that are common in programming. And so not learning all that much.
Right.
And it's kind of just like figure it out, which is a lot of what AI has been so far. It's just kind of, this is what you got to do, figure it out, see what you come back with.
No,
but I'm sure it's going to get better as they get more experience. They talk to more people in the industry. But software and AI jobs are just so uber competitive right now.
Right.
With just the limited, like a software engineer would beat me 10 out of 10 times at this. So it's like a very niche down. I'd either have to do research or wait for the field to expand a little bit more or start my own company.
Okay.
Which could be interesting, but very difficult to do. And yeah, that's kind of how the AI is going right now. I'm much more interested in like it's a lot more fun and challenging and like accessible challenges when I'm figuring out like how to design a beam or a column. It's made of concrete or steel.
Right.
And like, you know, that sort of thing is a lot more interesting.
Right.
And just like easier, 'cause civil engineering is the easiest engineering. But
I guess the most applicable too, right?
yeah, it's just the most
like,
broad. Like
most broad one, yeah.
There's just so much things you can do in civil engineering.
Right.
And yeah, so it's interesting to try to connect civil engineering to all these other kind of things.
I'm sure with like something like AI, the fact that it's so new and so evolving, you probably can't even conceptualize the way that you're going to apply it in the future. So like, yeah, I'm sure it'll come into
like there's
like somewhere.
Yeah, there's just general, just like different applications, but then there's like eventually one day you'll be able to feed like some AI model, like building drawings. It's going to come up with like the optimized like material selection of how to build this building.
Right.
Or optimize the layout of like if you just give it a plot of land and say, this is like, the town needs this to be like have this percentage of retail, this percentage of commercial, this percentage of whatever. Make me like a potential building that would fit this criteria and like optimize it in some sort of way.
Right.
So it's just like all sorts of interesting, fun little things. All right, you want to go inside, get a little hold on the base?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to transition over to
transition.
Going inside.
Yeah, think of a transition sound. add some sound effects. Get a soundboard.
Yeah. All right, I'll just pause this and we can take all our stuff off and resume it. All right, we are back with the vibe change. Inside the house now. I don't have to listen to the outdoor. It is like, what's the temperature right now? It's got to be something pretty cold.
It's got to be.
Let's find out. -8. I don't know what it feels like. That's on Apple.
How is it like in London compared to like here? The temp, like the weather and stuff. In Kingston by the lake, it's so like you get these winds that are so cold, like like negative like 30 or something, like most of the winter, I swear. Like
damn.
Yeah.
No, it's not that cold in London. We're like right in line with Lake Huron though. So we get like the storms that come off that lake. Like sometimes the storm just goes straight down. But you're at the end of Lake Ontario, so you get like the winds that come out at the top of
exactly
Lake Ontario. So yeah, it's pretty. It's a lot of snow, but not that cold. It's very slushy a lot of the time.
Right.
Just a bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. Oh,
recovering our muscles from the cold.
Yeah, heating up.
Muscles, yeah.
I wonder how far we walked. I didn't turn on my my walk tracker in time.
We walked far enough that I was lost. Like, I was so lost.
Well, we just like went down and then
did some stuff.
Just went through a bunch of the side streets and then walked back.
Like you were guiding me like like you're just pointing. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I'm going there.
Yeah, generally where we are. I haven't walked like this area in a while, but I feel like it's like a map that's just ingrained in my head. It's like, oh, I'm over here.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just go that way though. But it's good. Have you been keeping up with F1?
Not like I did in high school when I was like I breathed F1. Like I would go to sleep, like wake up F1. No, like
full race at once.
I watch every now and then when I remember that it's a thing, and like I semi keep up with going on, but what's going on. But I don't know. I know Hamilton's at Ferrari. I'm a Ferrari fan, it's the only way I'll accept Hamilton beating Schumacher's record is if he does it at Ferrari. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be fun, interesting. I think it's like the last season before like a big rule change. So, and the cars get mixed up again. So, I guess we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you been watching it?
No, I've been like in like first and second year, I would watch it a little bit more, but then
my like gem moment was I had like the 2021 finale when it was like this big controversy with Max and Lewis, like the last lap Max overtook Lewis, but it was because like this weird like
well, he let like a few cars through and then said no more cars are getting through.
Yeah, that whole drama, that was the morning of my chemistry exam. And I was like everyone I knew was like, because it was like also first year, at least in my program, everyone was like trying hard and like can't fail, like this is the scariest thing ever. It's like my first exam, my first chemistry exam. And I'm like, nah, it's okay, I've studied enough, I'm watching this in the morning. And like an hour later I had a chemistry exam. I did well.
Funny.
Okay. Worth it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to get your mind off of stuff right before an exam.
I actually, I used to do that, and then around like second or third year, I wouldn't do that, and I'd be studying all the way to the like last second possible. And I realized like ever since like I wrote the MCAT this summer and things like that, I think I've been valuing like not stressing about it right before, and I think it helps a lot. Not like having the kind of stress of like I haven't learned all the content like right immediately before. I don't think
being
jamming
confident in what you actually know.
It is, yeah. It's definitely valuable. Like just I don't know, so many intangibles on this podcast. It's like the type of thing like you can't describe it, but it's just like it puts your mind in like a different place when you like feel like you know it inherently and you don't have to like think like and remember it last second. And,
I find like it depends how much I am prepared before. Is like if I didn't prepare and then I'm super mellowed out before the exam, that's not going to make me do better than the exam.
Yeah.
But if I'm like super over prepared, like over stressing, I've done a lot of preparation, and I'm going right up until the end, then it's almost like your brain's almost burnt out and you can't apply it completely. And then you're like, it's like I find myself overthinking a lot more versus when I prepare a whole lot, but then like the day before or an hour before, I'm just like a lot more chilled out, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna write this eventually. I know what I'm doing, I know the steps, and then just get in there.
Yeah, I completely agree.
There's like a group of 5 of us who are civil engineers and in AI that will hit there's a bar on campus called the Grad Club.
Yeah.
And we'll go there before exams sometimes.
Really? So you've done exams with like substances? That's
one
crazy.
Beer in you.
I had some, wow. I don't know if it like changed that much of how I'd handle it, but like I just wouldn't think to try to do it. I feel like I'm too scared like changing something now to like to
you're at the end, you're
just it's just like everything's got to be the same.
Yeah.
Whatever I've been doing. Yeah. That's interesting though. I think it helps you compared to
I think it depends. Like there's been good performances coming out of that. There's been not as good performances coming out of that, but I don't know if more studying would have changed it. It's like it's like, did you do this because like did you do well or bad because of this, or did you do well or bad in spite of doing this? So it's like it's hard to tell. I have to keep trying new things, but then it's a dangerous game you're playing.
Yeah.
Where it's like try on like this exam that's worth a little bit less to do this, but then is it because it's worth a little bit less that you did better or worse?
You're changing the variables.
The variables are always changing.
That's not how the scientific method works. You have to change one variable.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, I think if you're prepared enough, it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're not over stressed out at the end.
Fair enough.
Yeah. How do you like worry about marks much, or is it more just like I just getting through the courses? Doesn't matter as long as I'm not failing.
I think one of my like there's like a, how do I say this? Like there's like a good part of it and like a bad part of it. Of one of my major personality traits is that I tend to, the way that I deal stress, which in some ways is unhealthy and in some ways is like it just works, is that I try not to think about it, and I do pretty well at not worrying about things. And because of that, like I'm in a program that's like so ultra competitive, of like everyone's like trying to be a pre-med, and like with good reason. Like it's kind of like the stereotype of like everyone's like super smart, and there's no club on campus that doesn't have a health side. It's like everyone's like super involved in everything. Everyone's super on their marks. They know exactly what they need to do, and to get into medicine is super competitive to the point where like the lower years below me are even like toxic and like
Is your
screw each other over.
group like,
My year is not
is everyone like out to get each other, or are you kind of like helpful with stuff?
We're
Like,
kind of helpful. At least in my experience, most of my friends are like, we're like good friends. We help each other. I've heard stories of like lower years really like screw each other. They like tell each other on the like the prof on each other. They'll like share things on a Discord and then someone will rat it out. It's like it's crazy toxic stuff. I don't know. And I'd find that it's not that case, but just the inherent fact that everyone's so competitive and everyone's so highly achieving, it is something that is this big problem that everyone's stressed about their marks and is very stressed about school in my program. I think I deal with it better than a lot of people because I tend to not think about it. The flip side of that is that I've also had like moments where I've had very like downward spirals at once because everything hits me at once, and might be like this like what's that called? Von Bismarck was the guy that got assassinated, started World War One, like a spark that just like,
oh yeah,
yeah, and it just like it hits me, and then everything spirals down, and like I remember the fact that I did this, and the fact that I didn't try hard enough for this, or like I failed this, and everything hits me, and I don't know. In a way, I think I value the fact that I'm able to shut things out because I think it keeps a lot of stress out of my life that a lot of people deal with. But then again, is it better that I would have been able to handle these stress pieces in pieces instead and maybe like develop myself through that instead of having it all hit me at once? I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, I tend to, I don't know. Marks, I'm also very privileged to say like I feel like I'm very like I'm gifted enough that like school doesn't come very difficult to me in general. And like I tend to be able to put just the right amount of effort into like I don't like shit through things. Like I don't just like get things done for the sake of it. Like I do value the idea of like learning through the courses I do and things like that, but I don't really go crazy, try hard and make colorful notes and like that type of stuff because I don't find that useful, but I also just think that like I can use my time differently and I just don't stress about that type of stuff. But yeah.
How do you go about finding just the right amount of work to do? Like, because I feel like for me,
Yeah.
In high school, it was how much do I need to do,
Mhm.
or I'll just get good enough marks that like no one really cares. But I'm
Mhm.
not like trying to be the best. I'm just trying to get it all done so I can go do something else. But then I got to the point where I got to like a term where it's like, all right, how good can I actually do in this? And then I'm putting all my effort into that. And now I'm trying to find the balance in between where it's like, what is just the right amount of effort? Where it's like, are you, and it also kind of depends what you're optimizing for. Are you optimizing to learn, or are you optimizing for marks? Are you optimizing to pass, or are you optimizing to be the best in the class? Like,
I think that completely, yeah. In my experience in my courses, it's for like pre-med, it's your grades are very important. So having like you're optimizing for like our standard is like getting the 90 percentile because like the second you get above 90%, it's an A plus and that doesn't matter. So it's optimizing for what do I need to do to get this 90? And a lot of the time it is putting as much effort as you can into it. I just think I find that if I take too long to do a project, that's when I reread it multiple times. I start to hate it. I start to rejudge what like I inherently knew was good, and then that's when I edit it into failure, basically. And I think, yeah, that's like a good question. It's like I don't really know how I do it. I just kind of know that like when I get to, I don't know. I think, and this is almost like justifying something that's not great, but like I have a problem with procrastination, but a lot of the time the reason is because it works, and the reason it works is because I kind of honed in on I can look at something and I know roughly how long it'll need to take, and I will give myself that amount of time. And if I give myself any more time to think and marinate over it, a lot of the time that's not as great. And that does happen because a lot of my projects are like group based. And if I have a group that's super the opposite of that, and there's like people who are super driven to not have procrastination and just get
they
it
just
done
want
the
to get it
second.
done as soon as
And
possible.
I admire those people, and I don't know if that person will ever be me, but sometimes I'll have group mates that are like that, and you have to work around that. And it's helpful that it is a group thing, so it's not just me having to overthink things, for example, but and like there's kind of checks and balances to it. But I'll still find that in like that kind of group setting, I'll do my stuff so early to the point where I'm like, wait, what? Like it comes to like a presentation that we did like 2 weeks before, like we prepared it 2 weeks before. I'm like, hold on, I don't even remember what I wrote. Why did I write that? That's stupid. Like I
Yeah.
should have like if I did this last night, I would have like we learned in the last 2 weeks from this course like this new concept. I could have applied it now. Why did I do it like 2 weeks ago? I don't know. It's just kind of I think giving myself just the right amount of time to just have a little bit of stress and like have to lock in and not just work for like 5 minutes and then go on my phone because I'm distracted because I know I have a lot of time to do it. It's just the way it has worked, and maybe it's not the best way to do it, but because it keeps on working, it's hard to make myself just
Dangerous
change
game
it.
to play
Yeah, it
where
is.
it's like
Yeah.
it works
Yeah.
until it doesn't, and then
Yeah.
it's a scary thing. But
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. That's how I work most of the time
Mhm.
because I feel like we're very similar
I think we are, yeah.
in how we work
Yeah.
and our capabilities with respect to like the coursework we're doing, where it's like
Mhm.
it's not the most difficult thing, and I know I can do it, and I know it's going to take me roughly this amount of time. So the perfect amount of pressure is not starting an hour before for something that's going to take 10 hours. It's starting
Right.
10 hours before that's going to take 10 hours,
That's right.
where it's like, this is, if I would just work at my normal pace and I'm doing it all correctly, then I'll just get it done in time. And then if I start 20 hours out, it's going to take me the full 20 hours because I'm going to be distracted for the first 10 hours and then
Because I
lock in
know
for the
what
last 10
exactly.
hours.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, for me, it's I've tried so hard to not be a procrastinator like that, but I'll find something else to do with my time. That's like this reading week. I gave myself like a list of things to do, but I'm not like I've barely even scratched the surface of things to do because I've got all reading week, and it's stuff that's like I don't necessarily need to do it, and it's not going to necessarily take me that long. And like you could use those same logic to do it earlier, but then it's
Yeah.
I just don't do that very often, and it's just a lot more habitualized to push it off to the end.
My rationale about like procrastination is that I think it's actually something that's a good thing when it comes to tasks. And I think a lot of people who try to do things very early or like very methodically and take their time doing it and give themselves ample things, if it's a task, I think it's actually to their detriment because I do really think that they could do it less and in less time and as effectively if they just give themselves a bit more stress to deal with it. I think it's the opposite case when it comes to like personal goals and things like that, which is why I can't say like I'm great at doing that either. But I think if there's any time that I'm like not procrastinating, it's for something that I genuinely find is like a goal. Is like I want to like I told myself I'll do this thing and I have the time to do it, I'll actually get into doing it because I want to. Like for example, like I'm taking this comp sci course. It's like this first year comp sci course. And I'm taking it, I'm pass failing it. It's the first thing I've ever pass failed because I'm like, I don't know, it's still grades conscious, but like it's like this art sci course that like maybe doesn't give the best marks, but I don't know. I've always kind of like I did robotics in elementary school. I kind of had some programming background. I've never really like been super into programming, but if like there's some sort of like it's important to know for statistical analysis at some point in my life, I might need to know some code. Fine, I'll do some programming. And it's super basic, but like I it's almost like the course that I'm prioritizing the most just because like I find it like it's genuinely like bettering me in such like an aspect that I'm not involved in whatsoever. And it's not just for the course because if I'm pass failing it, easily pass failing it. Like it's not like I'm not really worried about like failing it at all.
Yeah.
So I can very easily like half-ass this and still do completely fine. But I'm actually finding that like I want to do it and like I get ahead on assignments and I want to do it because I don't look at it as like a task, but I look at it as like a goal of like this is something that I find interesting and I want to learn for myself. And yeah, I think I personally think like procrastination is so frowned upon in a way that like I think there is a value for it because I think that people who don't procrastinate at all, and a lot of people who don't procrastinate at all, they just some of the time it's like because they want to avoid the stress that comes with it. I think that stress is super valuable to make you super efficient because in a world where it's like we're in like a capitalist world where everything has to be efficiency and how do you do this as well as possible, competitiveness, how do you do this better than the other person, you will kind of just fall behind if you keep on not procrastinating for those tasks and things like that, or like keep on not like letting the pressure get to you.
Yeah, I think that that's very key because I would agree where if it's something that is in school where there's a certain due date and if I've got like 2 or 3 weeks to get this done, I'm not going to start working on it until the day before is very helpful for the stress level that you get. But if it's something that's a lot more arbitrary, like if I'm doing like something like if I want to read just a book for fun, it's like if I just keep putting it off, there's no pressure there's no wall that I'm going to get to where the pressure is actually going to start building up.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, but when there's a due date, the pressure just builds and builds and builds, right? Until you have
and
to
that's where
start
the
working
value
on
comes
it.
in. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you're working on either like at a job or at like working on your own like company or anything like that, you're gonna have to make your own walls and start building up your own pressure. And so you're going to have to learn to deal with the stress, but you're also going to need to learn to make your own stress. So I feel like the ideal way to go at it is like getting into like the practice or habit of, if the deadline's here, what would happen if you can make your own deadline there and like make the pressure start building up earlier, so you're getting the same pressure, but then you're doing it early, so you get in the mind of, okay, I don't need to push it off, I can make my own pressure, but I can also handle the pressure.
Crazy balance. Yeah, I don't know,
because like it's hard.
That would be the best.
It's I find another reason why I find school so easy is because the problems are written out for you. Like if you're given a test and you're given like you're doing multiple choice questions, the questions are there for you. Writing your own questions and then answering your own questions and then saying you need to answer these questions by this time is so much more difficult than just being given questions to answer. So like I'm trying to get in the practice now of figuring out what questions to ask myself and like making my own challenges, because I guess you could always find people to give you challenges, but if you can make your own creative challenges, I feel like that's where the highest leverage opportunities are, you know? So
That's
that
very
sense.
wise. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think that, yeah, that takes a lot of like internal volition to make yourself do that. No, I admire you for trying to do that, because
it's not
yeah.
working so far, but I've at least identified the problem.
That's great. That's the first step.
Yeah.
Of all the time. Wow. No, I agree. I think that's trying to give yourself those like stresses and like asking yourself those questions. I think it's something that takes a lot of like internal power to do. I think at least maybe the step towards doing that, if you can't jump to that, is to get people to do that for you. If it's not something that like school gives you like set of challenges, but if it's something like you can identify that you need this to be done, so ask someone to do it for you before you can get to doing it yourself. As like maybe the intermediate step, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's always fun talking about how you like study and like learn in like fourth year after after most of it has gone and maybe it doesn't matter as much anymore. It's for your like personal, like, you know, in your life you're still gonna have like goals and tasks that you have to do. And it's kind of funny that part of the learning journey and like is not just the stuff you learn, but is learning how to learn.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It is, yeah. And it's you almost wish like, oh man, the amount of times that like in high school or even in like first year when I'm doing these like tedious like very fundamental base level things where it's hard to see how this is going to be applicable, or it's kind of boring because you're always just going into it wanting to like learn the cool thing, but it's like the fundamental, like I swear in first year the amount of little modules that I did teaching us how to do a proper literature scoping search of the articles that exist in on the internet and like properly look for what you're looking for. And I would roll my eyes and I'd be like, how the fuck is this applicable? Teach me how the cell works or something.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like, man, I'm learning how to do this now. And I swear I remember we were taught this in first year, but I wasn't paying attention. And I always like, I was like, it's so important to learn how to learn before you can learn. But I feel like we're almost sometimes taught these things, but you roll your eyes because it's like, this is so boring and you don't want to do it when you're a kid.
Yeah. I feel like there's definitely ways that whoever's teaching you should be able to help you to connect those dots. Like they shouldn't just expect you to like see the like all the dots that are there and you're gonna, okay, I'm on this dot and then we're gonna connect it there. It's like, all right, you're gonna do these 4 things and then like down the line they're gonna be connected to these 4 things. Like it has to be a lot more you have to have more like understanding of this is why you're doing it. Because I know in high school I didn't know why I was doing anything. I was just like, you get it done because I was just doing it because I could, not because I could and because I was told I had to. It's not like doing it because it's helpful for yourself. But then going into university where I'm like, all right, I want to actually have, I don't want to be just someone who flows through things like the easiest way and just get things like the bare minimum, because I was a very bare minimum type of person in high school, to like my own level of what the minimum was. But then I think it was after first year, it was still just like I'm trying to get my footing down.
Right.
And I'm like, this actually isn't so hard. If I actually tried, how good could I do? And then my marks went like in high school, I was like mid 80s type of student a lot of the time. If it's an easy course, I get a little bit higher. If it's a hard course, get it a little bit worse. And then first year, I was about the same, like mid 80s. And then I decided, like, all right, if I actually started trying to learn and trying to do well, how well could I actually do? And then my marks shot up to like above 90. And then I'm like, all right, now what do I do? I know that I can do this.
Yeah.
What the fuck do I do now? Because like just keeping that up is just not very satisfying. Like for you, you've got medical school, you've got your lines drawn out.
What are you doing this for?
What am I doing this for?
Right.
Is like,
Right.
I'm doing it to learn so that I can apply it later.
Right.
But I don't know if I'm going to do a job or like a master's and PhD kind of seem not very interesting to me. Like, because I've had this experience now at university where I'm like, all right, this is kind of easy. This isn't very challenging. I know I can do this. I want to do something that I don't know I can do it and just like throw myself off in the deep end. It's also a fucking terrifying step to take. So I gotta get the roadmap out a little bit more, because you've got like you're gonna eventually get there, but right now you've got this, and then you've got med school, and then residency, and then you're getting thrown off.
Yeah.
So it's like get the path beaten out there for you. What do you think is like the things you're gonna try to do to differentiate yourself from, like, because you said your program is like very competitive, and earlier you were talking about like you've got your cliche things. Have you thought about like the differentiators you're kind of try to like use to not really manipulate, but like
no, that's
make yourself different from the
fair point. I think I think there's a lot of like, I don't know if there's like a major differentiator to me, but I think I have a lot of like niche interests that like I can say that I know a lot about. Like I know a lot about, like I've been involved in Model UN for so long, and like I did it for part of university as well, and like I know a lot about foreign policy and politics and stuff like that. I've been involved in, like I'm very Romanian, for example. I think that's like a very big part of me, is like this just cultural, traditional, semi-religious like aspect of me that I feel like a lot of the undergraduate people in my level, in my position, maybe don't have that much of an aspect of it, because they just, I don't know, a lot of them have grown up and are very Canadian or something, or maybe aren't very in touch with their roots and things like that. I think that's like something that's a bit different to me. And I think I just have like, I don't know, I think I like to think that I'm very good at the cognitive elements and like putting things together and the puzzles of it all. I think it's the reason that I got into the lab that I am, because the lab that I am, like my PI, he's like the dean of something or other of health sci something at Queens, and he's like this big like figure guy, and everyone knows him for being like this. You never really understand what he's saying, but you're kind of just like trying to put the pieces together, and like he says this one thing, so you remember it from the last time, and so you put all the pieces together, and he loves this like puzzle piece, and everything's like this world that's like out there to discover. And I think that I share a lot of the thoughts of that. I just wish that there's like a bit of a in Canada, the medical school application process is so human focused, and I think that's a very good thing. I think that's just maybe something that I lack less, because I think I'm much more into the academic and cognitive part of it, where like I think I would excel a lot more in America or something like that, where they really just look at the MCAT or something like that. And I genuinely think it's a value that if I were to look at it like the ideal, what I explained earlier is my ideal medical system, I think valuing the human connection aspect and the non-medical, non-academic parts of it is much more valuable. And if that means that there's all these very humanist people that get into med school and I don't, I actually think that that's better for the medical system. Even though I think that I have value in it, I think I can do very well as a physician and things like that. As it is right now, I think the applications are much more focused on getting people like that, who,
like, because I was like volunteered in like a third world country for like a year.
Yeah, something like that, or just show sort of like the qualities of valuing diversity or ethical considerations, or valuing other people's perspectives, and like a lot of like the kind of humanist components of it. That's not just how well can you diagnose this person, which I think I would excel at much more if it was just that. But yeah, I think.
Don't you think if there's like way too many people who are all just like if it's not, I guess at a certain baseline, then you want more human things. But wouldn't you want like a certain set of people to be a lot more like not quite robotic, but a lot more like analytical, and then a lot more like a few that are more caring, where it's like it depends on the job you're doing, of course, and where you are.
I think a good mix of it would be valuable, but I still like fundamentally think like a human part of it is the reason you're doing medicine. Is
People
like,
want all this diversity, but then they're getting all the human people, not all the robot people.
Yeah,
Where's
that's the
diversity
future.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to shove that in their face.
Right? Like AI lives matter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, yeah, I think in my ideal world, someone like me who's a little more analytical focused is actually not the ideal candidate for something that's meant to, for the betterment of like a human and their entire holistic life, improving their well-being. I think it's more valuable that way. Obviously, they still have to be smart and analytical, but yeah, I don't know if in terms of, I think I still have to like a bit think about and rationalize and like really pinpoint what are the things that make me qualify me over other people, for example. I think there's just like a lot of people do like, they're this competitive swimmer who's done swimming forever and they've done swimming in university and they've won all these things and it's all swimming and swimming and swimming. And I don't have something like that, really. I just have like a lot of like niche little things that in an interview I feel like I would excel at because I could just talk to someone and like do that. In kind of building a resume kind of thing, it just doesn't look as cool.
I definitely feel that. I get a lot more in interviews than I do getting interviews. And so it's very difficult to like get yourself in the position to be able to impress someone with your articulation skills and your ability to show them that you are someone who would be an asset to them. Because on paper, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. What I've started to try to do is do a little bit more of a, everyone likes a good story. Like, do you have to do cover letters? Like,
Not
or is
really,
it like, no?
No.
Is it all just resume?
It's more or less just resume. I like the job I got in the summer needed a cover letter, but that's like the only cover letter I've ever done. It's usually just for medicine, especially, it's just like a kind of like this detailed resume of like how many hours you have in this different thing. And like,
okay. Then where's the humanity come in there?
It's in the like, okay, like that's the cover, instead of a cover letter, you have like a resume, but then you have like there's different questions that each university gives you that usually are some sort of ethics or experience based thing. Then there's like interviews that they have. That's kind of where it comes in. And then also the experiences that they look at. They do value things like wet lab experience or something, but then they'll also value a lot of like those human aspects to it as well. Or like seeing that you're this person that is involved in giving back to the community a lot more or something like that. It's
I feel like even with like maybe not as good of experiences as some other people, if you have the ability to turn it into a story, I feel like that's almost better for that type of thing. Like something that I've started to try to do, because I need to write lots of cover letters for things, is I'll turn it into a little bit more of a story type thing where it's not just, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, I learned this. It's more, when I was here, I thought to myself this. And then you develop it into more of a friendly type of story where it's like a little bit more connection with someone. That's like one of the reasons I started trying to like do this podcast is talk to more people, become more articulate, and like organize my thoughts. But another big reason was to be able to tell stories and articulate them clearly and be able to like be captivating. And then you get the live feedback from an actual person. It's not like when you're writing, it's a lot more difficult to do that. I feel like becoming a good storyteller is like so key for winning someone over, because then they can follow like an arc and it's like keeping them captivated. If it's like, as soon as you lose someone's interest, then they'll just scan and, okay, whatever.
Absolutely.
So if you can like, it's like being able to captivate someone and make something like a lasting memory that's good, of course. But I feel like through story, like humans, for as long as what made us humans is our ability to tell story and learn from story. And I feel like a lot of people now don't integrate story into their life as much as they could. And that's why people like having, like, that's why there's such a big creative area now of like TV shows and books and stuff where people are like striving to have like story and stuff. It's not as much in their everyday lives. They're not like, there's no story following what they're doing right now. And so you got to give people a little bit of that.
That's fascinating though. I never really thought of that. That's a really good idea. I agree. Like it comes back into like the idea of like looking back at those kind of fundamental human characteristics that we've developed for so long and why do they exist, and like the value of integrating them into our lives that maybe are deleting them a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, no, that's a great idea. I'll actually think of trying that because that's
Yeah. I
making
like
that
a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's why like it goes back to I don't know why I was learning English
Right.
in
Me
school
neither.
until now we're talking English and
Yeah.
I hated it, but now it's like I'm coming back to like I'm doing a lot more writing now than I ever did in school because I'm interested in writing, and that's how I like find myself trying to learn about myself and about different topics.
Yeah.
Is when I'm trying to explain it by writing or talking
Right.
or telling a story about it, and then you can not only express it more clearly, but then you understand it more clearly when you're doing the writing for it. And that's another thing that I've been on that writing grind.
Yeah, English was my like the bane of my existence in high school, and told
Yeah.
myself I wouldn't do it in university. I haven't, but now I'm thinking of doing it just for like prerequisites at other universities, and so I don't know. But
I think it's definitely because the schools don't do a good job of telling you why
doing it.
It's not there's no why there.
It's just here's Shakespeare, and you don't have to understand why. You just fucking know Shakespeare, like
yeah. Or like I don't remember if you were in our English class, but I think it was Alex and Andre and I were in a class where it's like you had to do a project where it's like watch this music video and then do like a presentation on the music video and the importance behind.
What was the point of that? You know, do you remember Eric Liang? He did
he was at Morton.
He did Wet Dreams as the music video. Like what? Okay, cool. Where do we learn? What do we learn from this?
Yeah. So it's like there's so many more ways that you could like give people the freedom to do what they want, but at the same time, I don't know if having like I don't know when I was back then, I don't know if there was anything they could have given me that would have gotten me interested. They would have had to be like really clear on the why. But like now where I'm at with my, like I actually want to do better and I want to improve myself. Yeah. Now I'm going back to it and trying to learn it again because I didn't really learn it the first time. I don't know if there is anything they could have done to make me want to learn it.
I think one thing that would be so of value is I think the reason why we realize these things is because now we're starting to have a reason to apply it and actually see that in the real world, this is why you need English. In the real world, this is why you need whatever. And I think that there were some morsels of like, you had some schism co-op things to do in high school, but like not for like I wanted to go into medicine. There was like nothing like that at Abbey Park for that. And if like I think having some sort of mandatory like it's cool that like the theory behind an assignment or a project is that you're applying what you've learned, but it's not practical to how you learning a music video or whatever isn't practical to how you're realistically going to apply it in whatever you want to do. And I think integrating like mandatory, like much more involved practical in the field, like at least observing what people do and how they're applying what you're doing in high school, I think has to be integrated a bit more than it is, because there's like morsels of it and it makes sense. But yeah, like you said, like if my future self went back and told myself like this is English is important, to be like fuck you. I could go back to 2035. Like I'm playing Fortnite. And like I don't know, at least if you took me into a doctor's office and showed me like this is the reason why being clear in your writing of this is like important. It's like okay, maybe I'll try a bit harder.
Yeah,
like
more apprenticeship things would definitely be good for people. Because
sure.
Have you ever you know who Robert Greene is? Like 48 Laws of Power.
No, I don't think so.
He's like he wrote all sorts of different books, but one of his books is called Mastery, where it like goes over different like masters of their arts in like art, in medicine, in different things. Like one of the big ones was who's the evolutionary biologist or the Darwin. Like he goes through him a lot, where he started off with like a big apprenticeship and then had like a fascination, and like the apprenticeship is like 7 years of apprenticeship. And I feel like as a kid it's like they're not that competent, but they're competent enough to like start shadowing people. Right. And like people should be like there should be designated non-classroom time where it's like even if it's
like I certainly didn't know what I wanted to do, and don't even still like know exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
But if I had more time to shadow different people, I would have been able to learn what I didn't want to do more quickly and what I do want to know kind of more quickly. So I feel like
Yeah, we have like this cool concept of like take your kid to work day, but it's like this one thing that we do in grade 9 of all things, which is like by the time I don't know, out of grade 9, like I forget what the like
yeah,
it's like why don't we rotate parents and like give it like give like different like I don't know, like take your kid to work day, but like do it like once every month and do a rotation of parents or something, and like
yeah, like field trips were always the coolest
Field
thing
trips,
because
yeah,
you're
exactly.
out and doing something
That's
that's
right.
different.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, but I guess it is kind of difficult to organize.
It is, yeah.
all
I'd
the
imagine that's
things.
definitely that's the utopic version of like
They could do better than they are
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right.
great.
Well, I think that's a good
Good one,
podcast. That
good
was
podcast.
a real good. I think we're coming up on 2 hours now.
There you
So
go.
I think we'll
Good
stop it
listen.
here. We got to do one in the future to talk a little bit more about religion.
Yeah,
Didn't
we
get to
do.
that yet.
We
And
need to bite into that religion.
might bite into that a little bit, but yeah, it was a great
Sure.
talk. Thanks for coming
Of
on.
course, thanks for having me.
Um,
I'm happy you keep on doing this. This is like great.
Yeah, it's
I don't know. I'm impressed when like whenever you like when someone like throws themselves at something, and then even if it's kind of like I don't know. I don't know anyone who's doing a podcast personally. It's kind of cool that you like do it, and you didn't do it just once, but you're like sticking to it, and you're like
Yeah.
seeing the like benefits of.
there's a lot of things I've done just once, but this is one
Yeah.
of the things where coming at it,
Yeah.
I thought this is going to be a long-term project.
Yeah.
Like this is like having conversations like this. You don't have these types of conversations too often, and I want to have them more often because I feel like one, they're fun,
Mhm.
but I got a whole list of the reasons to do stuff. But at the top of my like podcast notes thing, it says this is just an excuse to have meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
And you need more excuses to have meaningful conversations. And
Absolutely,
so
yeah. I'm
that's
proud of you for doing this. It's good.
yeah, no, it's
good job.
I'll give you the full breakdown of reasons. Yeah, I got a big list here. So, but I like this, and I think I think everyone should like have an excuse to have more meaningful conversations.
No,
But
I agree, yeah.
I learned to communicate better,
Yeah.
learned to ask better questions. Sometimes even asking questions is like a nerve-wracking and difficult thing to like formulate the right questions. Having uninterrupted conversations with friends where we're not just pulling out our phones all the time.
That's right.
Learning and reflecting out loud. Like a lot of the stuff that I've even said today is just like off the whim, where it's like, this isn't a thought I would have had unless I had this conversation. So like you learn and you reflect like through the speech. You can play it back later in life. Like
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like I
It'd
did
be
one of these
so
with
cool.
my Opa, like my grandfather.
Yeah.
And so like later I'll be able to go back and listen to it, which is interesting.
That is cool.
It's something that I find it's like, it's uncomfortable to start each one of these. It's uncomfortable to like reach out to people and get them on the show. It's like, this isn't something that's very comfortable for me. And I want to do more uncomfortable things, get more uncomfortable being uncomfortable.
Sure.
So that's one of the big ones. It's a good excuse to get to know new people. So if like there's someone that I want to get to know a little bit better, like I like their persona. If I talk to them for 2 hours, it's kind of hard to fake yourself for like 2
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
So I want to have a long conversation with them to get to like who they actually are.
Yeah.
And like, and it's an excuse to like get to know someone. Like I find it hard to like give a reason to like, it's hard to like just give someone, hey, do you want to just hang out to do nothing? Like it's just having that reason is good. It's a fast way to check my ignorance about new ideas, where it's like if I say something stupid and then someone like like if I've got an idea and it's just like I have like my own personal echo chamber. I have to like get it out and get someone's like pushback on it a little bit to see where
That's
I'm
how you
like
develop it.
missing thoughts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like
Fascinating.
check how I can be like less ignorant. Talk about things that people wouldn't generally talk about, like a lot of the medical debate like talks we had, like that's not just like that's not water cooler conversation.
No, it's not.
It's like you talk about more things that you don't talk about very often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's good. And can bring about a lot more clarity of your ideas, like especially when I'm in my own personal like echo chamber of ideas.
the clarity sometimes isn't there. It's like I have a thought, but I haven't really gotten it. But then when I get it out into the open,
saying it
you
is
can
something, yeah.
refine it and like chisel it away to become more clear, and then use it in your life a little bit more. It keeps me responsible and accountable. I guess that's not very much recently because I haven't been doing them so much. But if I was like sticking to a strict schedule, then it keeps me a lot more accountable. And also when I say I'm going to do something, like if I schedule one of these things, it's not like I can cancel, like, because I'd feel really bad if I'm like, I have to cancel on someone. So like the accountability is there. And this is just something that, another thing that I can aim at getting better at. So like something that I can apply when I'm learning how to be better at something, like how to like reflect, how to grow something, how to do better at something. This is something where I can apply these lessons to. Whereas in my life, it's like kind of apply it to school, apply it to myself, apply it to relationships. But like those are like very big things. This is something that I can like start applying my lessons to get like better at something. And so those are the reasons that
that's a really strong list.
It's my pitch to get other people to also start podcasts.
That's awesome, yeah. I absolutely love it, yeah.
Yeah, so there, I guess we're gonna stop it there.
Thanks for having me.
Let people know how they can get in contact if you want people to get in contact with you. If not, then just we'll cut it here.
I guess my Instagram is,
shout out the LinkedIn, shout out the Instagram.
I don't have I don't know. LinkedIn. I don't know. Instagram. Eduard.Popescu_, I think.
There we go. All right. Well, calling it here. Peace out, guys.